You're listening to Cattywampus.
Hi, I'm David.
I'm Steve.
I'm Gory.
And I'm Brian.
We played the original Unreal. It's a first-person shooter that came out in mid-1998. Is one of the... it's not the first 3D game, but it was one of the first widely adaptable 3D games.
What is the first? Is like Doom considered the first 3D shooter?
Actually, Wolfenstein.
Wolfenstein.
And then Doom shortly thereafter.
Gotcha. And those are what, like 94, 95?
Somewhere around there.
Earlier than that.
1872?
Yes.
So those
When
games,
did we acquire Louisiana?
in a technical sense, games like Wolfenstein and Doom 2, all very well known in gaming culture, they weren't true 3D games except for their levels. Almost everything in them was actually a two-dimensional sprite, which would rotate to always face the player. So there's no 3D rendering going on for anything except for where you're walking. It's not a full 3D game. It's just a 3D game with some tricks to make you think it's fully 3D.
That's why Wolfenstein, you always felt like you're in like a house of mirrors.
Everything is always looking at you.
So you were saying is from the player's perspective it is 3D, but the actual reality that the game is creating is not 3D.
Exactly. The world is 3D, but there's no models on anything except for the level design. Where the other games like Quake, Quake 2, and Unreal actually did have fully 3D levels. Everything from the pickups to the NPCs, everything was full 3D with a mesh, with an animation set that wasn't like pre-rendered outside of course, typical animation software.
I mean, devil's advocate, isn't the difference just academic?
Well,
in the sense that the player would never... I mean,
it's actually very obvious.
If a sprite falls in the forest, and no one's then...
So,
if you are the player, and there's never a hypothetical other player like the original
You do see it, though. Like, if you look at an enemy, it looks like a piece of paper.
Right.
Standing with a
There's no
gun.
depth to it. Yeah. There's not really a shadow. And here's the other thing, especially in games like Doom
like
2,
game.
where you could actually look up and down to a small degree. If you look down at an object that normally looks like it's laying flat on the floor, it would still be in the same position when you saw it. So it looks like something that should be laying flat. It's actually now tilted on its side looking at you. And if you jump down while still looking at it, it'll magically rotate to be in the same axis looking at you. And that's the difference between like these first 3D games that came out, like Wolfenstein and Doom, and the next generation of 3D games that games like Unreal really brought about. And credit given where it's due, I think Quake did beat them to the punch on the full 3D bit. But there were some technical limitations with Quake that Unreal sought to go past. So one of the big things for the day was they introduced a software renderer, which means that you didn't need to go out to a store and buy a fancy smashy graphics card to play the game. You could actually just play it with your CPU. That was unheard of at that point with 3D the way it was going. With a game like Quake, you needed to have OpenGL support.
For those sick Trent Reznor beats. I have extended my knowledge of Quake. I know nothing else about Quake other than Trent Reznor scored.
With its nail gun and its ammo pickup, the 9-inch nails.
I'm sorry, is that really?
That is actually, yes.
Gonna go play Quake now?
Why did we not play Quake? All my questions for about Unreal are going to be Quake questions.
It looks a lot worse, believe it or not, but
I believe you.
We can do that later. You'll see why.
So this is to like Doom what like Virtua Fighter is to like Mortal Kombat.
I guess.
Should I see myself out? Everyone just looked at me like I either said the smartest thing or the dumbest thing ever.
And I can't tell you which is
It's weird because one predates the other so significantly. Doom does predate Unreal by at least 5 or 6 years. Somebody can...
Well, so yeah, Corey was correct. It was May of 98 was Unreal, and
Right.
then Doom was in 93. So 5 years.
You know,
5 years.
Just like everything else, all graphics and computing at that point and pushing up until the last like 5 or 6 years, everything was on an exponential curve. So everything just kept getting better and better and better.
It was actually a really great time for gaming because we were going from very basic side scrollers and what we know as arcade graphics to what we now see as fully 3D and pseudo lifelike environments. The big arms race in terms of hardware and software development happened here in the late 90s. And we can still see like the steam really started to run off of these technologies in the early 2000s. And we haven't really gotten at the same pace. We're still making improvements, but it's nowhere near the scale, the pacing that we were seeing with games like Quake and Unreal when they came out and the games that followed thereafter.
So Corey, what was the what's the story of Unreal? And before you say there isn't one, I just looked it up on Wikipedia.
There is one.
And there are way more paragraphs in this than some narrative-driven comic books that will remain nameless.
So there is a story.
There's 4 solid paragraphs in this Wikipedia.
There is a story, although for the intents or purposes of the co-op playthrough, I'm sure you notice it's not particularly important. It does enrich your experience of the game, and I think it does make it more fun. But when you have 4 people running at full speed through levels, you're not going to really get that experience. So
that is true. We played this together.
Right. Dividing and conquering, getting
I saw
lost.
several fish.
Many people died
Lots
to
of buttons,
lava pits.
lots of ladders.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And pitch darkness.
And elevators.
I swam more in this than the last Zelda game.
You swam a good bit in lava, too.
I did.
So the story is, as the protagonist, you're a prisoner heading for a penal colony. And your ship gets pulled into what is essentially the Bermuda Triangle of space, and that once you've entered into any degree of orbit on this planet Na Pali, your ship is probably going to crash. In fact, it's a ship graveyard, as you find when you leave your ship that you crashed on and start wandering around the world looking for weapons and things to loot and all that. There are a multitude of ships. In fact, in the section that we played through, I think we went through no less than 3 other ships that had crashed and were either...
Is that what those were?
Yeah.
Some of them.
I didn't mean that to be flippant. I was literally like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh, is that what that was supposed to be?
Yeah, there were several ships, and those were those very, very claustrophobic and dark levels, which at the time were, insane. The lighting engine was one of the really big defining features of this game and its engine it was debuting. So they were really showing that off of, no, look, it's pitch black, but turn on a flashlight, now you can actually see, here's a flare, it's an orange light, and it's dynamic, and as the flare goes down the shaft, the light follows it. There's a lot of cool tech coming out, and at the time when this came out, there wasn't really any game that looked as good as it. In terms of the lighting, the textures. Mind you, it's been 20 years. Just over 20 years, really.
I mean, I didn't think it was that dark. Steve, do you concur?
Technical difficulties led me to a very dark place. As in, I spent the first 2 hours basically feeling my way, Matt Murdock style.
Yeah.
Through...
How was Daredevil the game?
Not great.
Daredevil versus Predator.
Not
How
great.
was Daredevil versus Predator?
I think that might be your display.
I will say I enjoyed this game quite a bit. Actually, I had quite a bit of fun. I literally don't think I've played a game like this since probably like 1997. But it occurred to me as an adult and not as a stupid child who was playing these things. As an adult, I was like, legally, how did they get around how some of this stuff just looks exactly like things from Doom, exactly like Predators? Like, I'm like, I guess Fox just didn't know this existed, would be my only guess.
And at the time, it wasn't as big either.
Yeah.
So I mean, it was popular in the gaming culture, but gaming wasn't like it is today.
No. Now, can you imagine if a game like this came out and there was just a Predator unlicensed?
There's a few things that are similar, although as a longtime fan of the game, I don't really see are the Scared or the Scare, the Scar? How do you pronounce it? Nobody seems to really agree on this. And I know you have a wiki, but that will disagree.
Skaarj. I'm going to say Scarge because Skaar is the name of the Hulk's son, and his name is pronounced Scar, so I'm just going to go with Scarge.
That's how I used to pronounce it. So the
is
Scarge
silent.
in later games actually got a more refined look as more polygons were allotted. And they actually don't look anything like the Predator, aside from some of them having like the tusks. And some of them have claws. But they redefined the look as they got more polygons. And then eventually we stopped seeing this particular antagonist, the Scarge, completely because Unreal shifted from a year later, Unreal Tournament came out. Because, you guessed it, Quake 3 came out to compete with Unreal.
I did guess that. Continue.
Well,
I definitely knew what you just said
These
was
are,
a
in
thing.
fact, things I was aware of.
If you have no follow-up questions, I definitely know when Quake 3 came out.
Yes, well, Quake 3 and Quake 3 Team Arena came out after, so Unreal Tournament was sort of the follow-up response to that. And that means that we're not getting a single-player campaign. Instead, we're getting a full suite of multiplayer options. Instead of just, deathmatch or team deathmatch like we had in Unreal Gold. And by the way, it was pretty much limited to that much. I know we didn't go through that. I think they also have like King of the Hill and Last Man Standing, but at the time, whenever you went on...
I sworn there was a Capture the Flag.
Not in Unreal Gold. They didn't introduce that until Unreal Tournament. And that's when they also introduced Domination and a lot of other really team-focused activities. And that's when not just online gaming, but also LAN gaming was starting to really surge up. LAN gaming had started back with Doom. And that was just something that, quote unquote, the nerds did on weekends. They would get their computers,
got their asses to Mars,
and they'd kill each other in like a death match. Well, games like Unreal Tournament basically said, hey, you don't just have to kill each other. You could split up into 2 teams of 8 and try to defend your flag and take the flag. You could try to capture these 3 points on the map and hold them to score points. Team focus instead of just running around shooting people. So a lot of people that have been playing these games, really up until then, you're just trying to get better. So you're trying to learn where things spawn. You're trying to get really fast and accurate with your shooting. And trust me, some of these people that play this for a while, I mean, you wouldn't believe their response time. They see someone in the corner of the screen, and instantly their crosshairs on them, they're pulled the trigger, and they got a headshot. Games nowadays aren't really that fast-paced, aside from maybe Counter-Strike Go.
And that was back when we got Fatality, which was, I guess, one of the first pro
gamers.
Gamers.
Not a Mortal Kombat when you're referencing.
No, a person whose handle was Fatality.
Yeah, Fatality.
He
like
sold
a
sound
famous
cards
gamer.
for a while.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
his name, his name,
he was living the good life.
Yeah, he got signed with, I think it might have also been Asus or Gigabyte, as well as Creative. And his name is basically put on their hardware with the red and black theme.
It's still on a lot of it.
Yeah, and people buy it because they think it's better because Fatality is on there.
And he was just very good at this
Quake.
game.
Yeah.
Oh, Quake.
But it was around the same time. That was like the first real competitive gamer you really saw. Or I guess a name for a competitive gamer.
As intense as Unreal Tournament got with its own competitive gaming scene, Quake was always considered to be the more prestigious because it was much more punishing for mistakes and it was much faster paced in the deathmatch. So, yeah, that's kind of where your pro gamers would really kind of congregate to. It was Quake and Quake tournaments.
Steve, you've been unusually quiet. I can only assume you loved Unreal.
I wouldn't say I hated it. It was...
Put that on the box. This was a game.
I didn't hate it. No, I mean, it's very much what I expected it to be. It definitely felt like a fast-paced shooter from the late 90s. I mean, it came down to being exactly what I thought it was going to be, which was Quake, but not Quake.
I think the biggest problem with any shooter from before early 2000s is that they weren't cinematic. They didn't have set pieces where it moved the story along by having NPCs and different set pieces that would explode or characters leading you somewhere. Instead, it's just exploring pretty much empty environments.
It's like Myst with guns.
Yeah, and like trying to find the button that you have to hit or the elevator that you
Boy,
have to go
did
up
we
and down.
find the elevators.
Yeah.
I have been
so
in
many.
more elevators today than possibly
Yeah.
every other game in my life combined.
And it's a lot harder to find where you're going because in almost every game today, either you have a marker or a checkpoint of some kind, or you have a character that's leading you there, or the narrative is leading you there.
Right.
Whereas in this, it's more or less it's an empty environment, which at the time you really didn't see it as that. But going back and playing it now, I'm like, oh, this is literally an empty level.
Yeah,
there's nothing here except
No. There were tables and chairs and pots and it was a
Yeah.
lot like Zelda.
I remember one area in particular where we were walking into what I can only describe as a castle or a tower or something.
The
and
Sunspire.
and we walked for a good 30 seconds on just an empty chasm. Just
going up
walking,
to the bridge.
Going on that bridge, and it was just walking. There was nothing there. And I think the problem is that I look at games like this that came out around the same time as games that kind of set a new standard for how first-person narrative and story went. And I'm thinking of games like GoldenEye. Because GoldenEye was the first game that you walked into a level and there were set objectives for you to complete in this story-driven game. So there would be puzzles or targets you had to take out or...
CGI Alan Rickman.
Right.
Alan Cumming. Damn it.
those terrifying faces.
But there were all these things that you had to accomplish that brought more to the story. And then from then on, first-person shooters started to copy that as, the template by which we still do stuff today.
GoldenEye's before this, though.
I think
It's
GoldenEye was 97, yeah.
Yeah. So, and that's what perplexes me to an extent is, this was a game that ran on hardware that was infinitesimally less powerful on the N64, and then a year later we get a game like Unreal, which could accomplish so much of that same thing and have that same kind of gravity to any event, but instead it just chooses to be a corridor shooter.
But it looks so much better than
That's fair. I won't
Devil's
disagree.
Advocate.
Yeah.
It is the prettiest.
It
It is the prettiest empty room I've ever seen compared to GoldenEye.
Right.
A room rife with incident.
Even on a Pentium 2, Unreal did run much better than GoldenEye ever did, and I remember very specifically how low the frames got on GoldenEye.
Oh,
with
yeah,
split screen.
absolutely.
The second thing to keep in mind here
Slideshow
is this is also at a time where games were coming out of the arcade setting, And we were going into this sort of phase of game design where it was just corridor shooting. You go from point A to point B, and you go to then you're in the next level, and you kill things along the way. You can explore and find secret areas along the way. Secret areas were a thing. You don't really see those in a lot of modern games. GoldenEye, I think, is a little bit of an extra normal example because that was based off of a movie,
right? And then they followed
Go
it
on.
up shortly.
But just bear with me here. This isn't just GoldenEye. This is a lot of games that were made from movies. Like, oh, there's a movie out, and now there's also a game, and it's based around that movie. You would see a lot of that. Oh, yeah, sure, there's a progressing story. There's other things to do. You're trying to be the person in this movie. So that wasn't really the standard in games. That was sort of thing you kind of expected with movie game adaptations at the time. Now, that did change, but I feel like that was sort of the attitude towards first-person shooters in general.
And
at that
just
point.
to clarify, when Unreal came out, the team that made that game, had they done games previously, or had they just built the engine?
So they were previously called Epic Mega Games, and they made a few side-scrollers, among which is actually one of my childhood favorites, Jazz Jackrabbit, a blatant Sonic ripoff.
I think wasn't that what Cliffy Beam had worked on? Mm-hmm. I'm pretty sure that was his first game.
They wrote
Clarify.
This is actually not just a game project for Epic. This is actually their first engine, and it's a 3D engine. And on top of that, when they debuted this game and this engine, and if you're familiar with how this setup works with like game studios, think about Crysis when it came out. Nobody played it because it was a good story. They played it because it looked great, and I want to use this engine to license my game. That was kind of what Unreal was trying to do. It's like, hey, yeah, check out this beautiful world we built. The story, the quote-unquote story, the single-player campaign lasts long enough to entertain you. The multiplayer is there, and the multiplayer works really good given what was out there at the time.
What was, I'm sorry, Jazzy Jackrabbit?
It's Jazz Jackrabbit.
Oh, Jazz Jackrabbit.
It's a side-scroller involving really high-speed platforming, shooting enemies that would take your health points away if you
But
touch
is he
them.
a Jackrabbit?
He's questionably a Jackrabbit. I mean,
I think there's another game almost like it called Bucky O'Hare.
Bucky O'Hare, yeah, that's a toy line that got turned into video games and stuff like that. Dead-Eye Duck, I remember. I'm back on that. You want to talk about Bucky O'Hare? I can talk to you about Bucky O'Hare. But so Jazz Jack, I'm sorry, I'm so charmed by this.
They also released Epic Pinball. I think that was actually one of their first titles.
Mm-hmm. What kind of animal was in that?
A ball.
Was it cute? Was it like Sonic?
It was highly spherical.
This sounds less interesting. This sounds less up my alley.
Yeah, it was a pinball game.
I've always seen Unreal as more of a tech demo than an actual game.
Is it like Portal in that respect? It's like, can you believe we did this? The first Portal?
Kinda.
It's not like there's really a narrative in the first Portal.
But Portal, they had an engine. They were just using the Source engine, which has been used multiple times. I mean, the idea of portals, that was kind of new.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's more proof of concept of, hey, look what you can do.
Yeah.
But if you think about it for 5 seconds.
I don't really think Unreal brought anything new gameplay-wise, but I do think the engine.
I don't know. That lava.
There are actually some really cool
flowed.
things in the engine's editor, Unreal Editor. That's what's been dutifully called since its incarnation. And there was actually, for the longest time, even a decade after release, so 2008, I was actually a really active participant in the modding community. For a game that is 10 years old, there were several thousand people online on this forum. I know it doesn't sound like a lot, but given how old the game is, I consider that to be quite a lot. And a lot of teams of people who had taught themselves how to script in the engine, that were building their own assets out of game and importing them into this old engine. This is Unreal Engine 1, mind you. It's got some serious hard-coded limits as a 32-bit platform. And they were making total conversion mods, single-player campaigns with voice acting, and bear with, because it's a little cringy, like facial animations, all that. Mod teams continue to bring life into this game with their own projects or their own continuations of the story, as it were, or to introduce new stories onto the same planet. And there were a very large number of releases. Some of the biggest well-known ones are probably a mixture of either 7 Bullets or Operation Na Pali, Zydia, just to name a few. And these campaigns, these mods, are longer than the original game, and in some cases use more assets that were created originally by the mod teams than were even present in the original game. And the community is still partially active, although I'm a little disappointed to see after 20 years it's really not what it used to be. I kind of expected
Unbelievable.
that.
You mean they don't make Mario levels anymore for the first Mario game?
Actually, they do.
Yeah.
Yeah,
they do.
They 100%
Yeah.
do.
There's
I mean,
actually
people still make NES games.
one mod that's teasing is going to be released soon, trademark, called Residual Decay, made by the same team that did Zydia and 7 Bullets.
My God, those were the best ones.
Well, they were somewhat
They're
popular.
on a roll. Keep going.
I listed the most popular ones, but in terms of total conversions, those were the either the most in-depth and or the most popular and downloaded. So there were actually hundreds of standalone levels, single-player campaign levels, or just mod packs that you could add on to the game. For example, like a co-op Redux that someone made for Unreal Tournament called Old School Amped. And what that let you do is copy your original Unreal folder into your Unreal Tournament directory. It would load those assets and actually create a better multiplayer platform. So every time you die, as you know, you lose all your weapons. You lose your armor. You lose your inventory.
I'm familiar with this.
Yes, it happened to many of you tonight, and to me once.
Oh, well, why don't you go to hell?
Well, Old School Amped.
I'm sorry that you're all elite gamers and I am an artist.
Well, the three of you died quite a bit, so I don't think anybody's...
There's a lot of fans and a lot of lava.
So Old School Amped would actually spawn you with the weapons that you would have had if you'd just been playing single player and you quick loaded the game. Because when you die in this game, you don't respawn. This game over, pick on a load game. Either you can restart the level from the save game that gets made there, or you can restart your quick load, which is a reference to a quick save file. You press F5 at any point, it saves the game. Press F9, you load the game. So if you die, you quick load. Instead of having to restart the level, you just go back to wherever you last saved.
So quick save and quick load were invented for this?
Well, no, they were present in other games prior to this.
I'm sorry, it sounded like you were on a rant because you were upset that this either wasn't somewhere or...
Well, here's the thing.
Corey, why don't you give us one of your trademark rants?
Here's the thing.
Tell me about Linux.
Introduce... That's a different day. So
Corey's going to have to sell us on Linux one episode. It's just going to be us quiet in the corner. We just listen.
And I'll just be standing on the table shaking my fist the whole time.
God.
Yeah, so...
Can we all get penguin suits?
As you all know, when you're playing any game, dating back to the earliest of games, you could save your progress. Not the earliest arcade games, but you could save your progress and continue later on if you had to do something. So you would press a button to enter the menu, select save, select a save game slot, and that would create a save point. Quick save is basically its own dedicated save slot that's dedicated to a specific shortcut key. Well, two shortcut keys, quick save and quick load. So instead of having to go through all these menus to save your progress, you can quick save. And that's really, really great for games where the consequence of death is restarting the level from scratch, because instead of losing all your weapons, you can just hit quick load and go back to whatever it is you were doing before you made that critical mistake. So later on, we started to see quick save disappear as games like Call of Duty and Halo introduced checkpointing, which is basically a quick save when we let you. There's no manual saving. It's just, okay, everything's dead in the area. Oh, except for that grunt over there. Go kill him. Okay, now it says quick saving, or checkpoint done. And now, if you were to come back or die, you'll just be exactly right here. And that system had its own issues for quite a while before they worked out. But
as someone who is not a gamer to your guys' degree, I finally got a Switch, and I got Elder Scrolls Skyrim, which I had never played before because I was in grad school when it came out and I just didn't have time. And it doesn't have an auto save feature on the Switch. You have to manually save.
It doesn't auto save when you.
It saves 20 minutes ago.
I think
so.
And you have to manually save throughout it. And as someone who's not used to that, I basically stopped playing Skyrim because I would die and they're like,
turn it off and forget.
I would die and they're like, well, go back to half an hour ago. And I was like, you go back to half an hour ago. I'm going home.
That's
terrible. Yeah, I think on PC it's set to anytime you enter a room, it saves.
Yeah, so on the Switch it does that, but if you enter a cave that you could spend 3 hours in,
well, that's like that on PC too. Except you can hit quick save.
Yeah.
Bound to F5.
Yeah. Hi, yes, everyone.
All right,
this is why David has stopped playing it.
And that
I went back to Mario Kart on the Switch. I was like, fuck this.
I love that feature in games, but I do find it breaks the immersion because I recently been playing Deus Ex, and I play stealth, and every time I do anything, I quick save because I don't want to mess up and have to load again. And it's a habit. I shouldn't do it, but I do. I'll go into an event, and before I drop out, I'll quick save just to make sure I don't get found by the enemies.
Yeah, it definitely doesn't help the immersion.
Yeah, it's just being able to quick load everything just kind of breaks it.
Basically, I as a casual gamer, I like to be tricked into thinking it is real.
Well, there's a reason the system changed over time, and it's ultimately for the better. But in my mind, there's no questioning that when checkpointing came about to replace quick saving, it was horrendously implemented. I can tell you, I cannot count how many times I died in, say, Halo, and I would quick load, to my checkpoint, and I'd immediately be dead again because the checkpoint happened to happen while a rocket was directly en route to my face.
That
you
happened
know,
a lot in older games. Like
Yeah.
your checkpoint would be you falling off a cliff.
Yep, and you get stuck
And
in
then
a loop,
you're stuck falling off a cliff.
which was the worst because the only other option that you have on your menu there is restart level.
Or sometimes reload, and if you only had that save, you'd have to go
I
start
feel
over.
like
Yeah.
I don't remember if it was auto saving or if I did this accidentally by manually saving, but I just remember the Nintendo 64 Shadows of the Empire game, like the Star Wars tie-in. That was like the fake sequel to fake. They're all fake. The Empire
fan fiction.
It's all fake.
Right.
The Empire Strikes Back pseudo sequel that's like halfway between it and Return of the Jedi. And there's like a whole jetpacking sequence in that game where you're
On the
going after.
train?
No, not on Ord Mendel. Kill me. No, it was later. You were on like some other planet and you're after Boba Fett, and it was just before you fight him. You have to jetpack across, and I ended up in this thing where I would die, ran out of jetpack fuel, and every time it reloaded me, it was just in the middle of nowhere with no jetpack fuel, and I literally was just like this suicide thing, and I had no other save, so I just had to start the game over. But I was 11, so that wasn't, a huge deal because my time was meaningless apparently.
And now you'd probably just throw the game away.
I would never. If
Never touch it
It
again.
would reload once, and I'd be like, absolutely not. And I'd turn on
Sorry,
the
game.
television. Be like, what's on Netflix? Although I did play through Final Fantasy VII on the PS2
With no memory card.
with no memory card, so I had to get through the whole disc each time.
No, thank you.
I got through the first disc, and then I looked at the second disc and went, no.
I did that with Metal Gear, and I got to the final fight, and I accidentally clicked exit instead of continue, or quit instead of continue.
You click
And
the lose button.
Yeah.
That
I don't-
Hideo
I
Kojima put in
cannot-
because it's artistic.
Cannot for the life of me remember. I had to leave the game, pause when I went to school. I came back and continued the fight with Rex, and I hit quit. And I literally threw everything. I was just like, God damn it! It was the worst day of my life.
It was the
Yep.
worst day of your
Yes.
life. Wow.
Yes.
You've led a blessed life.
Yeah, yeah. We've wasted our lives. Anyway, Unreal. You said there's Tournament, and is there any other games in this series?
Oh yes, there's actually a number of them.
Are they called like Unreal 2, Unreal 3, or are they?
So depends on. It's a little tricky. So
Oh, is this
there's-
like a Street Fighter 2 scenario?
not quite that complicated. So I'll break it down like this. So Unreal came out in '98, and then Unreal Tournament came out in '99. A year later, they put together a whole arena shooter. Unreal Tournament had its own series that actually went on to go to console as well under the title Championship. So Unreal Championship was what it was known as, but it was essentially UT for controllers. And that had several entries to the series. UT also had a follow-up in 2003 called UT 2003 that was mysteriously retconned into UT 2004 the following year. And after that, everybody that was playing UT 2003 just stopped. I don't remember why. There was something really wrong with it, and it shouldn't have been sold. I'll put it like that. So UT 2004 was its own staple for a while. Unreal 2 also has come out around this time, which was designed to be, as I learned later, a spiritual successor to Unreal. It did not share anything in common with the
in
original
what way
game.
is it a spiritual? That implies that previously these had all been narrative continuations.
So Unreal has an ending. Spoilers, you end up killing
So
the
you say.
Scourge mothership, and you stop the Scourge from being able to reproduce because they're crashed on this planet. They've been there for who knows how long, and they've enslaved all the natives, and they viciously attack anybody that lands on the planet or crashes on the planet, better. So when I hear Unreal 2 is coming out, having really liked Unreal 1, I think, oh, excellent. My ship is going to be picked up, and we're going to continue, and find out more about the planet. And all. No. You're a Marine. You're doing these missions. Scourge happen to be in the game, but they're really thick, and they have a lot of armor on them. I mean, these guys are huge. They're not at all like the little agile lizard.
Are you the same character from the first one, or are you different?
No, you're a completely different character,
Okay.
and you talk. You're a protagonist who talks, and you have other people that talk to you on your
I'm sure that
comms.
helps.
But you move as slow as a tank. You're stuck walking everywhere. In Unreal, you're running all the time. And it helps you get through the levels fairly quick. But imagine if you were moving at about a third of that speed. And
Riveting.
the levels were the same size. That was a big issue. Also, the game had almost nothing in common with the original Unreal, except for, there's Scourge in it. Oh, and there's Thrall, too. But guess what? They don't look at all like you thought they did, and they don't behave at all like that. So all we do is take the same name from a couple of the enemies, apply them to a completely different type of enemy. We write in a story about how big government is bad, and then we wrap it up with just mass destruction. Unreal 2 was abysmal.
Big government is bad. Small government.
If I remember correctly, it came out right around Halo 1 or 2.
It was just before that.
It was on the Xbox and PC,
Yeah.
and I think they were trying to appeal to the crowd that liked that game.
Well, it didn't play at all like that game. In fact, it didn't play like any other game that I could remember playing. Yeah, Unreal 2 was an abysmal failure, and I believe it was...
I mean, is the studio still around in the sense that they're making games?
So yes, the studio is still around. I mean, they went on to create, as you know, Gears of War.
I do not know. I mean, I do, because I'm
the
epic gamer.
The lead designer.
You're an
I
epic gamer
definitely
now.
know that.
You are an epic gamer
So-
because you play Fortnite.
Yeah.
Correct.
I have played Fortnite twice. You are correct.
Fortnite is their current
Oh,
major
so that is
IP.
them.
That
That
is-
is the same Epic. Because when you said they were called Epic, what did you say they were
Epic
called?
Mega Games.
Yeah, I
because
was
they
like,
ended-
that can't be related to the current Epic.
reason they put-
no one would be called that now and survive. No one would be called that in the '90s and still be around.
You Global Hyper Mega Net.
So-
That is the name of their business.
Yeah, they make the Okama Game Sphere.
I think the lead designer from Unreal, did Cliffy B do Unreal, or was it just
So
Tournament?
Cliff Blazinski was originally just a map creator for Unreal. And
He's one of 2 credited designers on Wikipedia. It's him and
For-
James Schmaltz
for Unreal or Tournament?
for Unreal.
Okay. Because he went on to do, I would think he also worked on Tournament, and then he moved on to Gears of War. I believe he had his hands on 1 and 2.
The last one he did was UT 2004, I think.
2004?
Which
Okay.
it's really telling because when Unreal Tournament 3 came out, as good as Unreal Tournament 3 looked, it played like ass.
Yeah, it wasn't great.
It was the worst.
Yeah. No, and there are more people playing 2004 right now than there have ever played Unreal 3, Unreal Tournament 3.
Unreal Tournament 2004, there's a reason. It's still got very fluid, smooth gameplay. Its graphics aren't as outdated, which certainly helps, but it's got a really good selection of maps, and the community continues to support it with more maps and more modifications.
When you say there's more people playing the ballpark, how many people are playing Unreal?
Unreal 2004 right now, probably 1 to 200, roughly.
Oh, no, it's higher than that.
Yeah, it's a
Is
higher
it?
number. than
Oh.
that.
The last time I logged on, which was probably about 6 months ago, it was maybe 1 to 200. Now this was also, I think, at like 2 in the morning.
During peak hours, you'd probably see anywhere from 8 to 1,200, I would think.
So on Steam's tracker, Steam is tracking around 100 people on average signed into the game at a given time through their platform. But it's very important to note that Unreal 2004 was not initially distributed on Steam. It was initially distributed through DVD. And it's actually still provided through other services like GOG. You can find licenses for this game everywhere. And Steam is a very small amount, has always been a very small amount of the market share because games like Unreal Gold, which is Unreal and its expansion, Unreal 2, Unreal Tournament, and so on, were added to the Steam library retroactively after Epic started publishing on them. So not a lot of people got their first buy of UT 2004 or really any of the Unreals on Steam. Oh, it's my first time playing the game. I'm going to get it on Steam. No. Everybody that was buying this was likely already a DVD owner that just didn't want to keep their DVDs anymore.
Even Unreal Tournament 3 didn't come to Steam until Black Edition, I think.
Yeah.
And that was, I think, 4 years after launch.
So
Something
it's really
crazy
difficult
like
to get
that.
a feel for it. But just at the Steam metrics, any given time, there's about 100 people. But if you go to the server list and actually look, you can just see how many people out of how many people are on every server that's listed. And the number is actually several thousand. So Steam's got about maybe 10% of the market share.
And the last time I checked, I think I downloaded Unreal Tournament 3 6 months ago also just to check it out. And I don't think there was even a server. And if there was, it was all bots. There was nobody online.
What is the purpose of bots playing a server?
It's
for-
actually-
To fill a server, basically, to give you something to do if there aren't players.
This dates back to Unreal Gold,
Gotcha.
their debut. One of their big staples was the AI, the ability to fill in missing player slots with not players, NPCs, non-playable characters, right? And their bot AI at the time was actually very good. You really didn't have a lot of games that had AI, as it were, that would fill in and do a remotely good job. I believe GoldenEye might have had a type of bot that you could put in, but it was no contest for a player.
It had enemies in the single player. I don't think it had bots.
I don't think
though.
they had
In
bots.
multiplayer. no.
Yeah, there are no
Honest-
bots.
Honestly, if you compared a lot of games AI, still Unreal has better AI.
Yeah, and you can kind of see their writing with their NPC code with like the various enemies, how they'll like the scares particularly. You may have noticed if you're shooting rockets, they'll dodge in anticipation of where the rocket's going to go, and they'll dodge multiple times back to back, and they won't dodge like into a wall and get hit anyway. So they made
Unlike me.
They made these bots actually pretty
Unlike
smart
me
for
several
what they
times
were.
today.
And
Yeah.
we were
And
playing on actually the normal setting, so what we were fighting wasn't even trying its best to survive against us,
And-
and they were still dodging everywhere.
I did notice, because in a lot of games, especially older games, depending on the way you run, you can almost trick enemies to fall off of platforms. Whereas I was running and jumping off platforms, and this character followed me, and he stayed on his platform and jumped to another one to shoot me, but never fell off or never got stuck anywhere.
They had a really good, they call them scripted pawns in the engine, and they are very good. And that's one of the largest classes in the game in terms of code lines. It's just the class that everything else stems from. Every monster in the game and the bots that themselves that you use to backfill a multiplayer match. So say you have a map that's very large, you are designing it for 16 people, but only 6 people connect. Well, you need 10 more people to really make it feel like something's going on. Otherwise, you'll end up bored, or even worse, you'll lose, right? So bots will help fill that in, and that's the whole purpose.
That's worse than being bored.
Losing.
It's an interesting insight into Corey's mindset.
So that was also another big staple of their engine, and although the scripted pawn wasn't included by default with the Unreal Engine, you could license it for an additional fee. So a lot of game developers that are new up and coming, maybe you've only got 6 people in your studio, maybe you've only got a $1 million budget for a game. If you license Unreal Engine, you have access to tons of refined code off the bat. The bots are supposed to fill in a multiplayer match to make the map feel more full. And if you have them set to the godlike mode, they're better than some players. In fact, I'd argue they're better than most players. They'll still miss. They still have, quote unquote, human error, but they know when to go, where to go pickups. They'll use vehicles appropriately if there's vehicles in the game mode. They'll attack objectives and say, like, capture the flag. They'll go and work with the person that has the flag, escort them back to the base, heal them up if they can. They'll do all of this. They'll work as a team in addition to working with other actual players.
I call it AI. That's just kind of always been like the nickname for the bots, but it introduced bots and the multiplayer.
It's a term you coined.
No, it's just been.
I like to call them AI.
They're bots, okay? They're artificial intelligences. They're just not HAL 9000 intelligences, okay?
But they
robots, or as I call
smarter.
them, bots.
Robots.
So they're not going to take over the world.
Well, not unless you duel them in Unreal.
Wait, what?
Wait,
This isn't how Skynet started.
but I've done this.
If you watch Terminator Genesis, it's not that far from how Skynet started, according to that reboot.
I met someone online through 2004 who went to school for network coding and programming, and the only reason he played Unreal 2004, and that's like one of the only games he plays, is because of the AI.
Yeah.
And he used it for his studies and to base everything he did off of that.
The great thing about the engine is, in the game, when you buy any of the Unreals, they come with another program in their install directory called Unreal Editor, which lets you access the game files thoroughly, and you can modify them and save copies and publish those as mods. You can also see the original source code for almost everything in the game, except for the most low-level engine-based stuff. So, like I was saying, with the original Unreal, one of the largest classes, a type of, if you're familiar with Java at all, probably not.
Of course I am. Please ask no follow-up questions.
Of course you are. So,
And C#.
One of the largest bits of
That's
code
a thing, right?
is
What if C++?
one of the largest bits of code is their scripted pawn, which
was
is
to
their
sell you a
bots.
monorail.
They're monsters. Technically, players count as bots, but they don't have any autonomous action. They only have input code. So, from a technical standpoint, you're just playing as one of the monsters. You just have controls, and they don't. They have
You're
their own
really
functions.
selling this game.
Well, yeah, it's really well designed. I think it still holds up today. Even in some of the more modern games, like you either don't find bots at all, like even Fortnite. One of Epic Games, if not the biggest IP they have right now, is Fortnite, and it has no bots to speak of, which is a real shame because.
But isn't that the selling point, that everyone you're playing with is a real person?
I guess.
Not to you, Corey. You don't care for us humans.
So it's really a shame, I think, because we started to see there was almost an arms race with the bots. Quake had its own very functional bots, although sometimes they were unbelievably good, which made them not fun to play against. Unreal bots had a margin of error like humans. Quake bots didn't. So if a Quake bot gets a railgun, a gun capable of killing you with one shot, they're going to kill you every time you even briefly show up in their field of view. Every time. Which isn't fun for a player, because even the fastest reflexes, you're not going to be able to fight against that. Unreal, you still had a chance on the godlike setting. Quake, not so much if you're playing on the hardest.
I seem to remember Time Splitters. The bots were able to literally turn and just plap you right in the head.
Right. That's not believable, and that's not good. A good bot should behave similar to a person and just be very good at whatever it is you're doing in that activity. If it's deathmatch, they should be good at finding weapons and shooting you with them.
But isn't that part of like the appeal of like the competitive edge against a real person? Because the idea is that like you don't
know what they're thinking.
You don't know what they're thinking, or you don't, or more. I would say more to the point is if people like. So let's take like a physical sport in the real world, such as like football. You don't want to watch. Well, I was about to say you don't want to watch a football match with humans versus robots, but I totally want to watch that.
Yeah. Now that you are
wrong. But that's more of a novelty. Like you wouldn't want to watch.
If one team did the same exact thing every play every time, you wouldn't want to watch that.
Oh, like the Overwatch.
That's true.
And that's
but
like
isn't that like
Browns? I'm sorry, I'm the only one.
I also get that reference. I get those references as well. I'm a man of many worlds.
I understand the sports ball.
I'm a man of many hats.
I love to.
I left them all
goals.
at home though, so don't ask me any questions.
Yeah, that's part of the allure of games specifically like Fortnite. But I think there's other cases where it would still be really good if. I'll give one game as an example here. One current, AAA game would be Overwatch, a game that has a very competitive scene. It has a competitive mode, which further drives this competitive scene. And something that can happen, and this happens frequently, is a player will disconnect because they're angry at their team, or they just want to make sure that you lose. And with when it's 5 versus 6, the odds are very much not in your favor with how this game works. If we had the option for a bot to pop in and fill in on our team, that would make a world of difference. Even if it's a predictable bot that everybody can, in their own time practice against, and eventually okay, I know what the bot's going to do because I've played against the bots.
The only game I've played that handles that well is Counter-Strike.
Correct.
The second a player leaves, a bot fills its place. But if your teammate dies, they can then jump into the bot's shoes.
Exactly. So if you get killed early on by a camper, you can take over that bot, who may have made very poor purchasing decisions early in the round, by the way. So you're not exactly getting a really great advantage. They might have picked up a submachine gun, but you're more of a sniper player. But you can still at least have like a second chance. Or even if you don't take control of the bot will do a respectable job of maintaining, going for the objective or covering you.
It still leaves it being 5 versus 5 or 6 versus 6. Whereas right now in Overwatch, if somebody leaves, it's 5 versus 6.
And that's terrible. That's terrible game design.
I don't know that it's terrible game design.
It is. If
no,
I get
it's
mad at
not
my
because
team, I can guarantee they'll fail by quitting the game. It's that simple. That's terrible game design. You allow players to spite other players through their actions.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that it's not terrible game design in the sense of in a competition in the real world, a robot can't show up if somebody doesn't show up.
Okay.
So it feels less sportsmanlike to be like, well, somebody gave up, so here's a robot. And I'm like, well, that's not, if somebody left. Now, granted, if they could come up with a way to substitute another player, which they have toyed with in some modes, then it feels like they keep pulling back from that as the game goes on.
That works in quick play.
It works in quick play, and it works in like arcade.
Yeah, spectator benching. I guess in real world sports, you have a bench. If somebody gets injured or has to leave the game, you have 5 other people sitting on a bench.
Now, granted, though, if you run out of those people and somebody else goes out, you are out. Yeah. Like, you're done in terms of getting new people. Again, a robot cannot show up, as far as I know. Granted, Steve, maybe you can speak to this. I haven't been watching the Cleveland Browns. Do robots show up if they all die?
Let's say yes.
Fantastic.
Time to watch football.
NFL, you got my money.
But that is something that you'll never see happen in a competitive game.
But that to me says that that's not the way to do it, right? So inherently, it can't be bad game design if you're like, but if we're playing for real, obviously we wouldn't do that. And I'm like, well, then if you're playing for real, you're playing for real.
The only way that would work is if there was some kind of way that you could sign up to join in matches that are halfway through, but it won't affect your rank, because as it is right now, you wouldn't want to join a game halfway through and not know what's happening. That would never happen.
Well, it does in arcade and quick play.
Some games do have backfill.
But if it's going to affect your rank, you wouldn't want that.
Overwatch refuses to do this because they don't know how to run a competitive first-person shooter. Listen, Unreal had bots to make maps feel more open.
The ratings of the Overwatch League would tell you you're wrong.
Good for the Overwatch League. In the Overwatch League, you have 6 people physically sitting in the same room across from 6 other people on a team. Yeah. Nobody's rage quitting. This is a league tournament.
How great would that be, though? Because it's going to happen, right? It's going to happen.
I don't think it will.
Oh, it's going to happen. Somebody's going to rage quit the Overwatch League.
They do rage
live,
quit.
And it's going to be so great.
They do rage quit, but they quit the team. Not during the game.
No,
but when it's over, they walk out.
I'm pretty sure their contracts are very hard.
Oh, I know. And I can't wait for the guy who's like, fuck it.
Okay.
I am out of here.
I am also on standby.
If people can walk out of the Super Bowl, I guarantee you somebody can walk out of the Overwatch League.
Unreal
be
all the way
entertaining.
through Unreal Tournament 3, all the Unreal Tournament
Yeah, watch
series
ESPN.
have bots to backfill if a player leaves the game.
Yeah.
So if it's 16 versus 15, a bot will join your team and help you even the odds. And they
Yeah.
may not get a ton of kills. They might hold a 1.0 kill death ratio. You know, they kind of hold even. But that's all you need. You just need to not be outnumbered by that one or even two people in every fight. That's all it takes. And other games are great at this. Counter-Strike Global Offensive does a great job of this in that they give you an NPC who is terrible. It's a terrible bot, but you can take over it. Overwatch refuses to. But this isn't about Overwatch.
Steve has to go. He's Batman.
My Dick Tracy watch just yelled at me.
Tracy, flat top's down on fifth.
So yeah,
He's shooting up the Fifth Street Bank.
there were a lot of really cool technologies that Unreal brought. It refined a lot of other innovations that were coming about in the first-person shooter and gaming industry as a whole. At a time where hardware was doubling in speed every 2 years, per Moore's Law, and software was competing just like this. This is the golden age for games because they were not only looking
Is
better.
this the golden age? I mean, I had fun today.
Game
but
development.
It's the golden age for games.
At the time, it was pretty goddamn golden.
To be clear about where we are on this arc
Think
of
about
golden
it like
age,
the
this is
comics.
the beginning.
At that time,
Oh, in the
they were
sense
the
that
good.
they're old, not great.
Yeah. Yes.
Exactly. It's not that the game itself is filled with
Tarnished
great
as gold
immersion
would be.
filled story-driven gameplay. All your narrative done in Unreal is done through translator messages. You have to walk up to like a panel or some dead person's book. There's a lot of books in this game. And you have to read their
Yeah,
entry.
these aliens had a lot of hardback printed books.
And these entries are sometimes as long as a Twitter message. I mean, they're very short, but they get to the point. I was trying to do this, then this happened, and now I don't know what's going to happen. Oh, they're dead. So clearly it didn't work for them. But you can kind of tell what happened.
Yeah, we killed all those people on that planet.
Yeah,
Yeah, all the little Goros.
Oh, man.
You killed all of the Nali, and that was heartbreaking, you monsters.
They looked like Goro meets Oddworld.
Yeah, they needed to die.
Starbucks
I don't
fucked
think
up
they
my
wanted to be
order.
there.
Got shot in the face by a scourge. Hashtag bad day.
Wait, are we the Scourge?
Yes, we are.
You
in this
can-
playthrough,
Is this some kind of twist? Is this
He-
some
he
kind of Dead
was,
Space
that's what
thing where
he-
I was the villain, or
so
what was the end of that game?
actually, that mod I was developing in high school, you did play as the Scourge. Although I never was able to get that thing fully released, as you may know, when it comes to free talent, people will come and
Definitely
go as
know.
they please.
That I do know. I can
Yes,
speak to
as
that
you definitely know.
unendingly.
And it's very hard to deliver, and that's why there's so many vaporware mod projects for this game. I mean, of 100 announcements, you might see 5 of them actually come out in a full release state, and maybe another 10 in a partial release state. So my mod Scarjobs did come out as a partial release state, but it was a mutator, which is the type of thing in this game where it modifies the existing game. So all the weapons and assets
Don't
we
all
created.
mods modify?
No, some mods are total conversion,
game?
where you
Oh, the mod converts it, as opposed to the mods that modify. Are you making this up?
no. let me clarify.
I'm only going to ask you this once a year. Are you lying to me?
No, I am not lying.
I know you're smarter than me, and I know you could get away with it.
So Unreal Gold specifically, not Unreal the original release. Unreal Gold introduced something that had come out in Unreal Tournament, which was called mutators. What this is a list of small modifiers. A very popular one back in the day was Big Head mod, where the more kills you got, the bigger your head got.
I'm familiar with this in other games.
So it's not like a full mod.
DK
It's
mode.
just a slight modification
DK mode.
to one thing. It's not like a full out mod. Where like a total conversion mod is. You don't even start the game normally. You click on a different shortcut that gets made from when you download this mod. It launches the game with parameters that then loads into your basically a copy of the game that has everything replaced with something you've done. Completely different levels, different menu, different settings even, different music, different sound effects, different weapons. Total conversion in that, yes, we built this off of Unreal, but there's nothing really intact from the original game here.
so it's just not even Unreal anymore, really.
That's total conversion mod. And a mutator is I took one thing and I changed it. I made the minigun into a sniper rifle. That's a mutator. So there's different degrees of mods, and those are kind of two of the most extremes. The lightest kind is a mutator. The most in depth is total conversion.
Was that the end? I'm sorry. You lost me like 8 seconds in there. I believe every word you said.
Okay. If your total conversion mod isn't going to pan out, you're probably going to look at your assets, cut the levels out, or put them as a standalone level pack that someone else can use. You're going to take all the code, make it into a mutator. So in my case, I made a code that replaced all the weapons in the game with the weapons that I designed. It replaced a lot of things with the lighting engine with modifications I'd made, including a real-time lighting thing that I'd done. It looked at your computer's clock to set the lighting in the levels. Pretty cool at the time, but
In your mind, what you just said is simpler to me than the thing you said before.
One of the best mods that I played. I don't know if Corey, if you ever played this. I believe it was a Quake mod for. It turned it into Dragon Ball Z. It was called Bid for Power.
I think I've seen that. I never downloaded it.
Is this like that Magneto video in GTA 5?
Probably.
Has anyone seen that?
I know what you're talking about, but I can't.
It's amazing. Like it's like the man-made a Magneto game that I would play for hours on end.
So it literally has nothing to do with Quake. All it did was take the game of Quake and then
what about Trent Reznor's score?
Gone.
No
Dragon
sale.
Ball Z.
Hard pass.
But it literally made a Dragon
Get
Ball
outta
Z
here.
game.
They replaced it with Disturbed.
So that would be a total conversion.
That's about right.
So that would be a total conversion, same way as Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare had a Star Wars conversion, I believe.
Yeah, they had a full conversion that turned it into Battlefield. Or
Battlefront.
Excuse me.
Why not just play Battlefront?
At the time, it wasn't out.
Yeah, at the time, the only option you had for Star Wars Battlefront was to go
On
out
the
and
PlayStation 2.
Play the old one.
Play the old one,
Yeah.
which actually didn't even... I don't even think the servers were active at the time.
They are now. They were then. They weren't for a few years, but
Right.
Yeah.
there's still not a lot of people playing it, though.
There's still not a lot of people playing the current one. What's your point?
Did you get the second one?
No. I got the first one
Yeah.
Black Friday or whatever.
I saw you online for like 6 hours, and then you never played it again.
Yeah,
that game was a lot of fun for like a week.
It came free with my PlayStation 4, and
Yeah.
it was worth it.
Super fun. And then it just wasn't.
Yeah.
There's so
But
many.
now there's a Darth Vader on my PlayStation, so I got that going for me.
Yeah. I kind of wish it made the breathing sounds, though.
I mean, like the Xbox 360s they had that looked like R2-D2 that made the noises.
I'm sorry, what?
I've never seen that.
You didn't know that was a
Can
thing?
I have one?
Yeah,
Sir, I think this is a thing you've made up.
they had an R2-D2 one. They had a C-3PO one.
I would be really annoyed by a C-3PO after about...
I'd probably be annoyed by R2. I think it's cute for like 5 minutes. You're like, oh, look at him beeping and booping, and it's 3 a.m. and you're like, shut up!
I had the Gears of War one.
Get outta
They had
here.
like Gears of War sound effects.
What? Gears of War?
Yeah, I was going to say, you say that like
What
there's-
sound effects are
You say that
distinguishable
like
in the
there's
game?
iconic Gears of
yeah,
War
I
sound
know.
effects that we all know and love.
You turn it on and you hear the chainsaw gun.
Something like
Gary
that.
Jules Mad World? What?
I would love that.
It was in the trailer, right?
Do you hear that you died? Reload checkpoint sound every time you turn it on?
that trailer is the reason I bought an Xbox. I saw that
I
trailer.
think you're not alone.
I saw that trailer and I was like, I need this fucking game.
Halo 3 is why I got an Xbox
I bought an
360.
Xbox and it got delayed, I think. It finally came out. I bought it and I played it for maybe 3 fucking years. I was obsessed with that.
I played the first 2 a lot.
And that is related to Unreal because it's the same guy, basically.
Is it the same
guy?
guy?
Same
Well, there
level
you go.
designer for that. Designed most of
So
Gears
this
of
is
War.
like the THX 1138 to the Star Wars in your mind.
You lost me.
I love how you could go off on all kinds of technology. I say the name of one movie, and everybody looks at me like I'm a fucking alien.
I know what you're talking about.
THX 1138 is George Lucas's.
I don't think I like George Lucas. I think I just like a few Star Wars.
George Lucas made a movie. He made a sci-fi movie called THX 1138 with Robert Duvall. It's based on one of his college short films, but it's a feature-length film. And
You're selling me on it.
then he made American Graffiti, and then he made Star Wars. He's directed other movies.
Are you sure?
Star Wars was his 3rd feature film.
Yep. And then
And then-
THX became something to break your speakers when you were a kid.
Yeah. Well, that obviously you had shitty speakers. THX just proved it.
I concur.
And with that, I've been David.
I'm Steve.
I'm Gory.
And I'm Brian.
Enjoy Unreal.
You've been listening to Cattywampus. You can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and Tumblr at CattyWampusPod. Email us at cattywampuspodcast@gmail.com. Music by Tilly.